I sent 7,199 emails to college coaches. Here is what happened. So I wanted to walk you through behind the scenes of what it looks like when we work with an athlete and what some of these campaign numbers look like so you can compare them against the numbers that you have. And then I'm also going to show you how we were able to generate these results so that if your numbers don't look like this, soon they can. So let's dive in with this. Here are a couple important things to know before I actually show you these numbers. The first is that these campaigns are across 20 athletes. I just chose 20 at random. I didn't cherry pick these or hand select them. I chose 20 in a range of dates and then just selected those. These players play multiple different sports, not just one sport. You have lots of different sports that are showcased here. And all of these emails and campaigns went out within the last 4 months. So pretty much since about December, January-ish. So this is fresh data. This is not from a year or two ago. This is fresh. This is recent, things that have just happened recently here. Now, I'm going to show you three different things. I'm going to show you the overall campaign numbers, kind of like the averages and the high and the low and that cool stuff. Then I'm going to show you the individual campaign numbers. You're going to be able to see the open rate, the click rate, the replies from every single one of these campaigns. And then I'm going to kind of walk you through quickly how we were able to achieve these results so that you can hopefully get results similar to these as well. So here are the overall campaign numbers. I'm gonna move myself up here. And then I'll show you each individual campaign in the next slide. So as you can see on the left side there, you have total, high, and low. The total is going to be the average, and then you have the high and the low. So when you see the number of schools, obviously those are blank. But if you move to the next column, you're going to see number of emails sent. So you see 359.95. That's the average number of emails that we send per campaign. Keep in mind that that's not the number of schools, right? So if we're emailing one school and we send that school, 3 emails, then that would be 3 sent emails, even though it's one school, right? So 359.95 per campaign. Of those, we're averaging about 288.45 getting opened, but again, it just depends on the campaign. And then the open rate percentage, 89.15%, which is incredibly high. A couple things to note about this. The first is that obviously, open rates have changed wildly in the last couple months with the update that Google and Yahoo released in February. So the averages have dropped a little bit in the last couple months. They're more around 65, 70, 75, 80, anywhere from like 65 to 80% is what we're seeing now. Whereas previously we were looking at, 85 to 95% in some cases, which is ridiculously high. Still, even at 65 to 80%, we're getting lots of exposure, and that's higher than most other just athletes and people that I'm hearing from. And then that percent, the 89.15%, that is the unique number of opens. So that doesn't mean the percentage of all emails that we sent that were opened. It means if we emailed 100 schools, 100 college coaches, 89 of them opened at least one email. That's what that open rate percentage means. You can see in one case, we had a campaign where every single coach that we emailed opened. That's incredible. And then on the low side, 77, which again, is very, very high. To get that much exposure, you'd be hard pressed to get that exposure at like a showcase or a camp. It's just not going to happen. And that's the power of email if you know what you're doing. Then you're going to move over to click rate percentage. Again, this is the number of coaches who clicked on a link in the email. And keep in mind that when we send the emails, we only send a link to video. We're not linking to a recruiting profile. We're not linking to a Twitter handle even. Sometimes we'll link to a Twitter handle, but it's pretty rare. And then also we're not linking to like grades. We don't do any of that. So those link clicks that you're seeing there, those are directly to video. We're getting eyes on the player. Coaches are evaluating the player, which is a really big deal. So to get that high of a percent means that the email that we are writing works. And so later on in this video, I'm going to walk you through some of the things that we do when we send emails. That have worked for us, and they're pretty controversial. And so when you hear me say those controversial things and you're like, wait, what? That goes against everything that I've heard. Keep in mind that I'm saying it with this data in mind, that what we're doing is working, and it's working incredibly well, okay? And then you have replies. You can see that we average 7.95 replies per player. Keep in mind that those replies are not just interested schools, right? They might be camp invites. They might be coaches saying, we're not looking for your position in grad class. There's lots of different replies that could be baked in there. And then replies are heavily dependent on each player themselves. So there are going to be players who are reaching out to only reach schools, like schools they're probably not even capable of playing at. And so those reply numbers are going to be obviously much lower. Then we have players who are reaching out to schools that they're totally capable of playing at. And those replies are going to be significantly higher. And you're going to see examples of that. So that's about an average. I think 8 replies around there is about right to get a 9%, 9.5% reply rate is awesome. And so this is also just an example of why it's so important to send a lot of emails, because if you contact 100 schools and we do a pretty good job and we have a 9.5% reply rate on average, that means that you're going to get 9 to 10 replies for emailing 100 schools, right? And so you have to have that volume. If you only email 10 schools on this reply rate, you're looking at about 1 reply. So keep that in mind. Just on the high end, you could see we emailed 469 schools, or emails, I should say, we sent for one campaign on the high side, 181 on the low side. So we're looking at a lot of data. Remember, we're talking about 7,199 emails here. We've done this quite a bit, and so hopefully we can help you get some really good results as well. So here are the individual campaigns, okay? So all of the data that you just saw is coming from these campaigns right here. Again, I just took some campaigns that happened in the last 4 months because they're fresh, and I just pulled them. So some of these campaigns are better than others, as you can see. So a couple things that I just want to point out here. You're going to see most of these campaigns have a 3 or a 4 in front of the email sent, right? We're sending 300 to 400 emails. And so when people are like, hey, how do you get these results? This is incredible. This is amazing. Because we do a lot of volume. Like we do this well. We don't just want to send a quality email. We also want quantity. We want both of those things. Keep in mind also, if you only have quantity and you don't have quality, you still won't get results. Just because you do a ton of volume doesn't mean you're going to get results. You have to have both quantity and quality. A couple things that also stand out to me here. If you look at the total clicks, this is the estimated number of total clicks. So every time a college coach clicks on one of those links, then it's going to be counted as a total click. This also includes when coaches are sending it to their staff, and staff members are also clicking on it. And so this is a good metric for understanding the amount of exposure that you can get from a single email campaign. Now, I also want you to know that email tracking metrics are not 100% precise. They just literally can't be. And so these are an estimation. So these numbers could be off, but they're not going to be like insanely off. So when we look at those link clicks and you see something like, just take the second one, right? 282 link clicks. That means that there were 282 times that a coach clicked on a video to go watch the video, whether it was the coach that we emailed or someone else that was on their staff. But you're getting 282 looks. And when we're talking about going to a showcase or a camp and you're trying to use that for exposure, tell me how you're going to get 282 coaches, looking at you one time, and they're looking at you. They're not doing anything else at a showcase in a camp. That's so hard to do, and it's so hard to get. And that's why email is so powerful, especially when you couple it with something like Twitter. And now you start building interest on Twitter as well, and you're pointing coaches to a YouTube channel where you have a lot of video. And then you're using that interest to then choose which showcases and camps you want to go to. And so now when you show up on campus, guess what? These coaches have looked at our players how many more times than everyone else who's coming to that same showcase and camp? We have a huge advantage. This is how the recruiting process works now. And a lot of people are still operating, from recruiting advice that took place 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. It just doesn't work nowadays. You can't do the same thing. You're also seeing the replies there. A couple things stand out. You can see in one case in a couple cases, we had 29 replies, we had 20 replies, we had 19 replies. That's a significant amount of interest. It doesn't happen for everyone, as you can see, but it does happen. For when you have a really good player who is reaching out to schools that they're capable of playing at, you can get a crazy amount of interest from email if you know what you're doing. Now, there's a couple other things that you're going to see there. There's a couple players who only got one reply, right? And so sometimes it just doesn't work how you want it to. And you can't always control that, but it means, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. What can we do better? How can we improve the video? How can we improve the email? Can we send to different coaches, right? Or different schools, different types of schools? Can we improve our list? Can we go to a different platform, right? Can we reach coaches on Twitter? So there's lots of other things that we can do there, but guess what? Now we actually have data behind this. It's like, okay, we can use that data to make better decisions and go get more interest. And what's also interesting is that one of those players, I know for a fact, got one reply and committed to the school. And so it almost doesn't even matter when you get like 29 replies or not. The ultimate goal is to get you to a school that you love, or get your kid to a school that they love. So even if you only get one reply, if that's the school for you and that's the one you end up going to, that's it. Like, that's really all you need. We try to generate as much interest as we possibly can to help you find the best fit. But ultimately, you really only need one fish to bite, and it needs to be a fish that you absolutely love. And so that's also just worth keeping in mind. So these are the results that we've been able to drive, and I want to show you how we were able to achieve this. I'm going to show you 5 things that we did, okay? And so hopefully you can take this into account and get results like this as well. I'm going to try to move me out of the way, but there we go. Okay, put this down in the corner. All right, so the first thing is we got coaches to open the emails, okay? If coaches don't open your emails, they can't click on your video. They're not going to recruit you. It's like you never sent an email in the first place. And with a lot of the deliverability stuff that's going on with Google and Yahoo, it's getting harder and harder to land in the primary inbox. It's getting harder and harder to get coaches to read your emails. And so this is an absolutely critical piece. Now, you can see by those open rates, we were able to do this. And so here are some things that aren't as important and things that are incredibly important when getting coaches to open your emails. Things that aren't as important, sending through a recruiting platform. You hear all the time, oh, well, I'm sending my stuff through NCSA. I'm sending my stuff through Field Level. I'm sending my stuff through Sports Recruits. That's fine, but it's not important to do that. In fact, it might hurt you. You should be looking at your open rates. If your open rates are really, really low on those platforms, you can't be sending on those platforms anymore. So that is something to keep in mind as well. And then subject line. Subject line is important. It matters. We talk about it. We test different ones, but it's not as important as people think. People spend so much time on their subject line when in reality, it can be so incredibly, just use name, position, and grad class. There you go. And that'll be totally fine for you. Subject line is not a huge factor in getting coaches to open the emails. Here are things that actually move the needle when getting coaches to open the emails. Landing in the primary inbox. If you land in the spam folder, if you land in the promotions folder, in the junk folder, then coaches are significantly less likely to open your email. In fact, they're probably just not going to. So it is critically important that you land in the primary inbox. And so that's part of the reason it's so important to track metrics is if your open rate is super low, then you know, oh, maybe it went to spam. Maybe coaches never even saw it. But if you're not tracking those metrics, you would have no idea that that happened. And that's part of the reason it's so important. Emailing the right coach. I used the wrong right, which is really embarrassing there. It should be RIGHT. But emailing the right coach, that is incredibly important. If you email a coach that is not involved in recruiting, then they're not going to respond. And so you have to email a coach that is involved in recruiting, that is actually going to watch your video, and you have a chance of either getting a response or getting put on a watch list or something else. And then the last thing is having the right contact info. There's so many people who are using databases of college coach contact info that are outdated and they're dusty and they're not up to date. And so you're using email addresses that are not current, that are not active, and so you're sending emails, but they're never even reaching your intended target because those emails are not accurate anymore. And so it's really important that you have the right contact info. Those 3 things are going to be way more important than the first 2 things that you see on there. Number 2, we got coaches to click on video links. If they do not click on your video, then you essentially got 0 exposure, right? Because they never even saw you play. They never saw anything about you or your kid. And so you have to get coaches to click on the video. That is the single most important thing when sending an email. That is what you are optimizing for. So here's some things that make coaches more likely to click. And remember, when I said a little bit earlier, I said, I'm going to say some controversial stuff. Remember how good the data was and what we're able to show when I say that controversial stuff. This is that moment right here, okay? So the first thing is a short email. Obviously, the longer your email is, the less likely a coach is to watch your video, just for that's basic logic, okay? The second thing is no stats. And I know that's incredibly controversial. There's parents who totally disagree with me. That's fine, but just show me the data that you have, okay? Show me the data that you have. Do you have as much data as we have? Did you send 7,199 emails, and we sent way more than that. I just pulled 20 campaigns. Do you have data that you can show me that says that stats are actually going to increase the chances that a coach clicks on that video? Because for us, actually, the data shows that they're less likely to. So we didn't include any stats in our emails. You're welcome to include them in yours. I'm just showing you what we did. We didn't include any self-evaluations. So we don't talk about things like, hey, I'm a leader on the field. I have a really high game IQ. If they're a soccer player, I'm good with both feet. If you're a football player, I have a really good arm. I can throw down the field. If you're a baseball player, I got a quick bat speed, right? We didn't say anything like that. We just leave all of those self-evaluations out of the email, mostly because coaches don't trust you as the parent, as the athlete, to accurately evaluate the player. They just don't. So we left those out. Reduce the number of links. So a lot of times, and this has changed over time as we've continued to hone the process and hone our system and how we do this. We used to include 3, 4, 5 different links in an email. We don't do that anymore. We typically only include 1, maybe 2, but usually just a very low number of links. There's lots of reasons for that. That include the paradox of choice, which is a whole other thing. You probably seen me talk about that before. I've talked about it on YouTube. I've talked about it on Instagram. You can go find those videos. But also just in terms of deliverability, the more links that you include in an email, the more likely they are to go to spam or promotions or junk, right? Those email service providers like Google and Yahoo assume that you are selling something. So they shut down those emails pretty quickly. And then the last thing is no grades. We don't include transcripts. We don't include test scores. We don't include any of that stuff, mostly because we're trying to start conversations with coaches. And so it's very easy for us to start conversations with video, and then all the subsequent conversations and follow-ups can include grades. So we don't include grades as well. And so these are the things, obviously there's more, there's always going to be more, but these are the things that led to us having such a high click-through rate on that video. The third thing that we did that led to these results is that we followed up with coaches. Okay, you're going to get more replies and more interest and more link clicks and more everything from follow-ups than you are the initial email. So a lot of times parents will go send 20 or 30 emails and then they don't get the responses that they're looking for. And I'll say, well, how many did you follow up with? And they'll say none. It's like, okay, we missed a huge opportunity there, because the majority of responses that you're seeing, that you saw on the screen, like 5 minutes ago, however long this video is, those came from follow-ups. And so it is critical that you are following up with college coaches. Here's are the reasons why follow-ups actually work. Okay, the first is that coaches are busy. Just because they see your email one time doesn't mean that they remember who you are. It doesn't mean that they actually even read your email. Like, they might have opened it, but not actually processed the information. Maybe they got a call at the exact time that they opened your email. There's lots of things that could have happened. And so coaches are busy. Follow up with them more often. The second thing is that it shows genuine interest. Coaches know that players just blast out emails, but when you send a coach multiple emails, it shows interest. And so by following up, you're telling the coach, hey, I'm actually interested. I'm actually trying to get in touch with you. I'm not just trying to get your attention. I'm trying to build a relationship with you. That's important. Third thing is that they are more likely to watch the video because there's multiple types of emails and videos. So you can send one type of video in the first email. You can send a different type of video in the second or third email. So all of a sudden, you just have a buffet of options for college coaches, which means that they are more likely to click on one of your videos. We've seen that multiple times. And then the last thing is it's just more shots on goal. The more emails that you send, the more likely you are to get an open, to get a click. And so simply by sending more, you're just giving yourself more chances. It's sort of like if you were to go to Vegas and it was like, all right, you only get to roll the dice once, or I could say you could roll the dice 100 times. Which one are you more likely to win on? Well, obviously the 100 times, right? And so it's the same thing. It's just because you got more dice rolls, you got more shots on goal. The more emails that you send, the more follow-ups you send, the more chances you're giving yourself for success. Number 4, we tracked our email metrics, right? You get to see all of this data. You get to see how we were able to do this. Why? Because we tracked it all, right? And without data, you don't know what's working and what's not. You don't know if college coaches are opening your emails or not, right? What happens if you come to me and you say, hey, Jack, will you take a look at my email that I'm sending to college coaches because I'm not getting any responses? Maybe there's something wrong with it. And my first question is going to be, okay, well, are coaches opening your email? And you say, well, I don't know. It might not be your email at all. Maybe they're just not getting it. They're not reading it. They're not opening it, right? They never saw it because it landed in the spam folder. So the first question you ask is not, hey, maybe there's something wrong with my email, but are coaches opening the email in the first place? And the only way you know that is by tracking the metrics. So we like to track 4 metrics in particular. We track the open rate to make sure that coaches are opening the emails, the click rate to make sure that they're clicking on the video. We like to track the replies, obviously direct interest and feedback, and then bounces. Bounces means that you're emailing an email address that's no longer good. Obviously there's lots of changes in college recruiting, coaching changes that happen. And so you try to stay up to date even with really good fresh data, contact information. You can't always account for that. So there's usually a couple bounces that happen in each campaign. Not a big deal. It happens in pretty much every single one, but it's good to know and it's good to track to make sure that that's not happening for multiple email addresses. And then remember that these email metrics are not precise all the time, right? They're just giving us some direction. It's not that, oh, it was 65 versus 70%. That's really not a big change. But if it's 20% versus 70% in an open rate, that's obviously a big change, and that indicates something. So we track these metrics, and you should too. And then the last thing here is that we did not personalize every email. Some of those campaigns that you saw were personalized, and we personalized, we had a line that maybe talked about the coach and said, hey, saw you won ACC Coach of the Year last year, right? Something personalized. And then we had other campaigns in there that were not personalized at all, right? Can you tell a difference between those campaigns? Probably not. Like if I pulled up that individual campaign list, you're not going to be able to tell a difference. And it turns out personalization doesn't improve results. And I know that again, is controversial, and it goes against what a lot of people say, even what I used to say. This surprised me. I used to be the guy saying, you need to personalize. There's probably still videos on Instagram of me saying that, of saying, you need to personalize the email. But the data shows different. The data shows different. I can have opinions all I want, but the data shows different. And instead of spending time personalizing those emails, spend that time sending more emails. Volume is the number one factor in generating more exposure. It's the number one factor. And so we used to personalize emails. We don't even do that anymore. Like, listen, it has zero impact whatsoever. And if we can go send more because of that, we're going to go do it. We're going to go do it. So we did not personalize every email. I know that that's controversial, but again, I got a lot of data to prove it. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that these results that you've seen only show direct replies, like when they directly reply to an email, but direct replies are not the only indicator of interest. We generated more interest and exposure from these campaigns than just direct replies. We had coaches put player on watch lists. They never responded. It looked like they weren't interested, but they wrote their name down and then came and watched them at a showcase or a tournament. And they're like, what are you doing here? And they're like, oh, I got your email. I loved your video. I didn't reply, but that's why I'm here right now. I came to watch you. So we had players get put on watch lists. They followed us on Twitter or Instagram to stay updated with us. That's why it's important to be in lots of different places. So we got follows on Twitter. They contacted coaches, right? They called some of our athletes' coaches, said, hey, can you give me a referral or recommendation for this player? What do you think? We had them watch video multiple times, not just one time, but multiple times. We're getting, 2x, 3x, 4x the number of, impressions and exposure on those pieces. And that's obviously very important. And so that's also the cool thing is that, yeah, we want direct replies because it's fun. It's fun to go send a campaign and get 15 coaches who are saying, yes, I'm interested. This is awesome. This looks great, because you could change your process overnight, which is incredible. But at the same time, we send these campaigns not just to get direct replies, but more than anything to build momentum. It's like, can we get on watch lists? Can we get follows on Twitter? Can we get a couple replies? Can we get them to contact our coach? We're just trying to build momentum. And when you do this a couple times in the process, then you eventually build so much momentum that it's impossible to fail. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do. So parents, if you want to automate the process of sending emails, because sending emails is an absolute pain in the butt, and you want to be able to send at the volume that we do without totally ripping your hair out and losing your entire life doing a full-time job. If you want to track the important metrics like open rate and click rate, and you're not great with technology and you don't really know what platform is great to do that on, if you want to get more video watches and replies and follows for your kid, and more exposure in college recruiting, if you want to know that you're not using outdated strategies, things that worked 10, 15, 20 years ago that you hear regurgitated on the internet that are no longer good or helpful, and if you want to get more interest and offers for your kid, then you can book a call to work with us. The link is in the description. We can walk you through what that process looks like, and I will see you guys next time.